Hello and welcome to the RYLACast, the official podcast of Camp RYLA, Rotary District 5810. Surprise!
We're back.
My name is Greg Tepper, and the man, my co-host tonight, per usual, is the man they call Josey, Andrew Josey Utz. Josey, it's good to have you back, partner.
The pleasure is all on this side of the table. Great to hear you as well.
So, there were two ways to play this. One way was to just come out like we're doing right now and say, yes, we know that we haven't released a podcast in 16 months. We noticed too. We could say that, or we could just like totally sandbag it and like and just say, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Like, you guys just missing all these episodes. What, you haven't been listening? But no, we'll be honest here. We've been gone for a second. And in the time, our last episode, I'm looking at it right now. Our last episode is episode 35, released on April 30th, 2021. This podcast will be released on August 3rd, 2022.
Well, now it has to be.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to timestamp it for you, so you better get it up. So, Josey, has anything happened to you in the last 16 months? Catch us up.
Yeah. Well, let me see. There's just so much stuff. The 16 months.
You got a haircut.
I got a haircut.
Great.
I have a child.
Yeah, you do.
who needs a haircut, so it's kind of coming full circle.
That's right. Party P.
Parker
Utz exists, and yeah. So you became a dad.
Yes.
And how's all that going?
You know, it's going. It's good. Parenting
You're supposed to say that it's like the great joy of your life to have a child. You're not supposed to say like, it's fine, whatever.
No, I was trying to come up with a way of like, it's great. It's the one of the greatest joys of my life. I was thinking about this in preparation of recording too, because that's a major thing that's happened to me in the past 18 months. And I'm married to a superstar.
Verifiable.
Because like fatherhood is great, right? But we don't really do anything like for 9 months before the baby's here. So I'm playing catch up.
Yeah. I feel that, because also in that 16 month span that we were talking about, my wife and I had a second kid.
You did.
We have tripled the number of RYLACast children in the 16 month span. Yeah, Max showed up in December, and yeah, so it's been a bit of a whirlwind. And then there was the whole thing of we had camp for the first time in 3 years.
We did. We had a busy 16 months.
We did. Good. And now look at us relaunching the podcast.
Look at us.
Who would have thought? Not me.
Well, yeah. Did you have a good 16 months? I know you doubled.
What did you
doubled the children.
This is big. What did you do on your summer vacation? If summer vacation was 16 months of your adulthood, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like my life is just more or less kind of all running together, because we now have an 8-month-old and a 3.5-year-old, and so it's just like all sorts of energy. But you and I were both able to make it to camp this year.
Yes.
In spite of our children. And yeah, we were back there at Hobbitell early May, or late May and early June, which I remember whenever the schedule came out, I was like, man, that's pretty early for camp. And now, considering it's been 175 degrees in August, first week in August, I don't know what Dana and Duff and the powers that be at RYLA know, but maybe they have a weather machine that
they have to. Yeah, that's the only logical explanation.
Because this is kind of this is right now. This is maybe the week. Like if RYLA, if camp had happened at a normal time, it would be happening like this week or like last week.
Yeah.
Um,
And
that would have been tough.
yeah, I don't know about you. I cannot imagine. I can't walk from my car to my house
Bro.
without breaking a sweat. I cannot imagine a ragdoll tournament or volleyball tournament in this weather.
So, yeah, so we're back. The podcast is happening again. This is episode 36. Coming up here in just a little bit, we're going to have a very special guest who is almost single-handedly responsible for the return of the RYLACast. Krystal Perez will join us, and we'll explain why she is almost single-handedly responsible for this podcast coming back. But first, Josey, I called for the ball. I called ISO for the big segment here off the top, and I would be remiss if we didn't discuss the fact that our podcast has been a little bit let's say inconsistent over the last little bit. So we were really cooking with Crisco, right? Things were going pretty well. We would go a little bit of span where maybe we'd go like a month without releasing an episode, but then we'd release get on real heater. Even when the pandemic hit, we were relatively consistent up until like May 18th. Then we took a little bit of time off, and then we kind of came back for a couple of episodes, and then took some time off, and then we had March 2021. We're like, we're gonna do it again, and we posted 4 episodes, and then we stopped. So we've been inconsistent, and honestly, so I don't want to make excuses, right? I don't want to make excuses for the podcast kind of being inconsistent. But what I do think is that this is an opportunity for us to learn, an opportunity for us to take some lessons from this. And I want to talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about commitment. with regards to leadership, Josey. Is that okay with you?
This is a great first segment. I'm glad I passed you the ball.
So I think it's fair to say that you cannot be an effective team leader without commitment. No effective leader or no good leader has ever been like, I don't know if I'm super into this kind of thing. You know what I mean? If I'm super into being the leader of this charge, because I think commitment is it's important not only for your leadership style, but also it's a quality that tends to inspire and attract people to your cause. And because if you don't believe in the cause, then who's going to follow you? Like if you're just like, hey, hey, Tepper, for example, you're a Clemson football fan, correct?
Correct.
If you were like, hey, Tepper, come root for Clemson. I was like, well, how do you feel about them? You're like, oh, they're all right. Like that wouldn't make me want to root for Clemson. You know what I mean?
Right.
A team's going to buy into the team leader when the team leader, really, they may even buy into the team leader and the personality before they buy into the vision of the group. And so I found this article from it's from South Africa. I've got actually a colleague of mine, his wife is from South Africa. And did you know that they pronounce like, the striped horse? The horse with black and white stripes?
Okay, yeah, yes.
Do you know they pronounce it zebra?
Unironically, I'm assuming.
Unironically, I just they think everyone else is wrong for calling it zebra.
I did not know that. The zebra.
That is not important to this, but all that's to say is that I found this article from a leadership organization in that runs team building events in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Pretoria, and Durban. And they talk about like the true nature of commitment, and one of the things they say is that commitment is a heart issue. Which I think is you're going to need that before success can be experienced. And if it's a person's heart that's ultimately going to make the difference between a good leader and a great leader, you can't wait until everything's perfect before you're willing to commit yourself, especially as a leader. You got to be on the ground floor when kind of things are being put together. Commitment is a heart issue, which I like the way that's That's phrased. Also, commitment is tested by action. It's about you can say how much you're committed, but you can't talk about it. You got to be about it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Are you following through on those commitments? And then commitment opens the door to achievement. There are going to be times where commitment's the only thing that carries you through. That the only thing that's going to power you through the tough times is just being committed to it. They press on, and no matter what, nothing worthwhile can be achieved without commitment. And so, one thing that I looked at, Josey, when thinking about this podcast, and we think we have a schedule now that's going to work for us, and how we can be more committed leaders when it comes to this podcast, is how can you improve your commitment? So one of them is to measure your commitment. Okay. That's a big goal setting thing, right? Is make it so that like your goals are achievable. They're they can be counted. Where where the goal is and things like that. Something that's there's a word for it. I don't know. It's escaping me, but it's measurable basically. So measure your commitment. Take some time to look at where you spend your time, and just see that you're committed, but are your actions showing otherwise? You know what I mean? How much time are you spending on this task? And so for us, for example, we want to put out a podcast. Our goal is to put out a podcast every 2 weeks. I think if we were to measure our commitment, if we're not putting out a podcast every 2 weeks, maybe give us a little bit of leeway here and there on but like if that's then somewhere our commitment has fallen short, right?
Right.
Another thing that I think is important is, kind of identify what are the things that you would not be able to stop doing no matter the consequences. Like what are the things? So for example, we talked about how we want to do this podcast every 2 weeks, right? But I think it's fair to say we love this podcast and we love the listeners of this podcast, but like, I think our kids and our families are going to take priority. That like, if Hank has soccer practice on the night we're supposed to go and record, then like you and I are going to go and do, we're going to go and take care of that. Right.
Right.
So I think one of the things that I think is important is that you can be committed while also understanding where that commitment falls as far as your priorities are concerned. And finally, the third one, I think this is the most important one, and perhaps what caused me to talk about this article altogether. Make your plans public. I'm just going to read this directly. If you find it difficult to make that first step towards commitment, make your plans public. Making your plans public will help you be more committed to following through. So I guess this is kind of a call to action as well. That if you like the RYLACast, you should pester us about it. We give you permission that, this is something that I think, but I think this is, obviously we're using the podcast as a framing device, but I also think that there's a lot that we can be learned from being committed to causes, when you are in leadership positions. We talked at camp about, especially like when I spoke earlier in camp, I mentioned, I was like, are you doing things? Are you involved in things because you want to be, or are you involved in them because you think you need to be? And I think it's okay to just say, you know what, I'm not committed to this. This is not what I'm about. But if you're gonna be committed, then you kind of got to go all the way. And I think there's a lot of different things that you can take from this as far as where commitment fits in the leadership toolbox, because it's something that I think we maybe overlook sometimes.
That's a really good point, Greg. And you're really kind of holding our feet to the fire here. You don't get much more public than the first episode back after a long hiatus.
Yeah, but I thought it was important because I was trying to think of like what is, we don't want to hide from this. We want to, if we think that this is an important tool, we think that this is something that's important for the organization. We think it's important for the people who listen to it. We think I get a lot from it personally, and so. Like for example, do you have a planner, or are you like a phone calendar guy?
So this is embarrassing. We're airing out our laundry, right?
Yeah, we got 60 months of it, so yeah.
Right. So I'm neither. I'm like
Oh no,
write
Josey.
stuff down with pen and paper in a notebook, but then have several notebooks littered throughout my life so that nothing is really in one succinct thing. All this to say, I could commit to using a planner, and that would immediately get me more in line and organized.
Is Joni, your lovely wife, is she a planner person? Like, she have a planner?
1,000% yes.
There's got to
yes.
be one in the family. And
Right.
because my wife is a planner person, but I'm making a concerted effort. I'm committing to using a planner. And by using the planner, I have our RYLACast recording sessions on my planner.
Oh.
Yeah, see?
Look at that.
You know what that is? That's commitment.
That's commitment. That's walking the walk.
That's walking the walk. So there you go. A little bit of talk of commitment and leadership. And we promise to be a little bit more committed to this podcast. And if we're not, we give you permission to bug us about it.
888-787-RYLA.
We should set that up. Can we get 888-787-RYLA?
Let me see. Let's stay tuned for our next episode.
Speaking of keeping us accountable, one of the people who is almost single-handedly responsible for the return of the RYLAcast is Krystal Perez. Krystal Perez was a 2019 camper who came back as a staffer on an ACA in 2022. We had a great conversation with Krystal Perez. Here's our conversation with Krystal Perez, the guest on the return episode of the RYLAcast. Hey, Josey.
Hey, Greg.
So one of the things, I know it's been a while since we've done this, but one of the things you may remember that we do on the RYLAcast is we have a guest each week, or we try to.
We do, actually, don't we?
Yeah. I took the liberty this week of booking a guest, and we'll get into why this was the correct guest for the re-debut, the relaunch of the RYLAcast. But let's bring in live from... Are you in Austin?
Yes, I'm in Austin.
Well, kind of spoiled it. Live from Austin, it's our good friend, Krystal Perez. Hi, Krystal.
Hi, Greg.
Hey, Krystal.
Hi, Josey.
Welcome to RYLAcast. Are you familiar with what we do here?
Oh, of course I'm familiar with what you do. I think I've listened to every episode at least once, maybe twice.
Okay. Listen to the confidence. She said, "Oh, of course. Of course she knows."
I'm going to be honest. I think you have a better feel for what this podcast is about than we do at this point.
How?
Well,
I made this podcast.
Yeah. But as we discussed a little bit earlier in the show, it's been a minute, so it's kind of like relearning to ride a bike. You know, you just fall off a lot.
I don't know how to ride a bike.
Is that true?
No, dead serious. I don't.
Wow, this is a great place to start. So you don't know how to ride a bike. You never learned how to ride a bike?
No. I think I fell off once, and I said, I'm not doing this again. And
you know what, though? I appreciate that. I appreciate being like, falling off once and being like, this isn't for me. I'm not going to get the kind of enjoyment that I want out of this. I think that's fine.
Yeah.
I think quitting's underrated.
Yeah,
okay.
Nobody... Everybody you see riding a bike is not falling off. So I'm sure you're looking at everybody riding a bike thinking, yeah, you haven't fallen off enough. That's why you're still riding around.
Yeah. Great point. It's a good way to put it. That's an excellent way to put it, Josey. Okay, Krystal, we've brought you on to be our guest on the relaunch of the RYLAcast. Let's start with a question that we're fond of asking as a good positioning statement. Can you tell us a little bit about your RYLA story?
Sure. So I originally didn't know what RYLA was. I had nobody in my life who had ever been to RYLA. I know a lot of people have siblings that have gone. I knew nothing. So my speech and debate coach one day was like, hey, I signed you up for this camp. And I was like, okay. And I went through like this interview process, still knowing no clue what RYLA was. And then going to this orientation and being told, hey, you're going to be shipped away to the middle of Texas for a week, meet a bunch of strangers, and they're going to become your best friends. And I was like, no. I was like, this is marketing. There's no way that I'm going to make best friends for life in 5 days. I was like, there's no way I'm going to change my life in 5 days. I didn't believe it. Um, and I remember, like, as I was going through camp as a camper, realizing slowly just how right they were. Realizing these people that felt like really awkward and really weird to meet day one become people I still lean on today. I was a camper in 2019, and I still talk to these people in 2022. I was able to come back as an AC this year and kind of see things from the other side and realize just how life changing it is. I don't think I realized it in the moment. I mean, you're 17, you've got 6 million other thoughts going through your head. But seeing it from the other perspective and seeing like the realizations that dawned on me as a camper dawn on these new teenagers, and seeing them find their strengths through RYLA, and seeing them grasp all of these concepts on leadership and friendship and just changing their mentality and realizing that their mentality could be changed. It was amazing, and it's something I hope to continue coming back to for years to come.
So, Krystal, you returned to camp for the first time as a staffer this year, and from your story, from your RYLA story, you drank the Kool-Aid pretty quickly. What did you get out of it this year that maybe you didn't get out of camp as a camper in 2019?
I think it was realizing just how intentional RYLA is. Like, you're kind of told at the beginning that like everybody will feel handpicked, that they'll feel that way, but you don't realize just how intentional a lot of the behind the scenes is, and like why these staffers are asking you certain questions, why they're making you think through these things, why you're doing activities that feel uncomfortable. I didn't quite realize why or what the purpose was behind a lot of the what seemed like fun games to me. I didn't really understand their purpose at the time. So now being on the staff side, I realized, oh, this is why we do round robins. This is why we do egg drop, and kind of understanding the intentionality behind everything.
Okay, so you had certainly a roundabout journey, and I feel like anybody we talk to who has been involved in camp for the last 5 years is going to have some sort of roundabout journey. But yours, you go to camp in person in 2019, and then I don't know if you saw the news of what happened in 2020 and 2021, but we didn't have camp. But then you come back in 2022, and this isn't. I don't mean this as any sort of dig at anybody. I mean this just as a fact that a lot of people who were involved in 2019 maybe didn't stick around until 2022. It's hard to stay engaged with something that's not super tangible. I'm interested in what was it that you think kept you coming back all of that time when there. Quite frankly, there was RYLA and things like that, but there, that draw of camp wasn't necessarily there. What kept you staying involved?
Oh, for sure. And I was part of RYLA for a hot second there, but it's not the same as going back. And you're going to hate my answer here, but it was really the podcast that kept me going. Because I know they tell you like, oh, like you'll feel this RYLA magic even at the end of camp. And I remember that really like being kind of my driving force through my senior year until COVID hit. And then I felt very lonely. I'm an only child, so I have no siblings and really nobody my age directly to talk to. So there was no way to keep these like RYLA concepts going. So having those podcast episodes, whether that be past ones or even the few that were recorded during COVID, were the main things still keeping me engaged in what is RYLA and engaged in that RYLA mentality and in that growth mindset, and trying to keep those skills as a leader fresh, or at least keep my mind thinking about them.
Sorry, I'm at a loss for words because
I'm at a loss for words too because somebody listens to the podcast.
I know. and like listens to the podcast and agreed to come on as our featured guest after listening to the podcast.
Josey, I have a question. Your wife is a Rylarian. Does she listen to the podcast?
Can you take this part out of the recording?
Sure.
There is no chance she listens as much as she should.
Yeah, that sounds like Joni. Anyway, I'll definitely edit this out in post, and nobody will ever hear this because
every time you say that you're gonna edit something, I don't think it's ever been edited in any of the episode.
I'm glad that somebody got the running joke. Anyway, Josey, you were going to ask something.
Yes. So, Krystal, you're a student at UT. You're sitting in Austin currently, studying psychology and biology. A lot of the ologies. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Funnily enough, it's neither in psychology nor is it in biology. I want to be a patent and intellectual property attorney, specifically for fashion, art, and entertainment law.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So then, can you explain? Are you still studying psychology and biology, or did I make that up?
No, you're not making that up.
Can you? Could I ask why? That seems like an odd thing to go become an attorney.
Yeah. So when I first kind of went down the path of wanting to do patent law, I realized very early on I needed to have some kind of hard science degree. So when I was applying, because you have to take something called like the patent bar, and you have to have either a certain number of like hard science classes that somebody of that major would take, or be a hard science major. So when I was applying to UT, I wanted to go in through chemical engineering. This should be noted, I was not good at chemistry, but
I love that energy though. I love it.
Oh yeah. Thankfully I was auto admit, so UT was like, we'll take you, but please pick something in liberal arts. So I was like, okay, I'll do a BS in psychology. It was the closest to like a science-y degree I could get within the liberal arts college. And also all of my family has a psychology major. So I was like, okay, I fit right in. And then I was doing the math of how many credits I would need to be eligible to take the patent bar. And I realized I was really only like 2 classes away from just a whole other degree, which is a BSA in biology. And so I went ahead and applied to just do them both, because I really do enjoy psychology and learning how people work. But I was like, I really need this degree to eventually go on to do what I love. And so I applied, they let me in. So I'm doing both majors with the intent to go to law school later.
Okay, so then let's bounce back, because we talk with as you know, you're an inexplicable fan of this podcast. We talk with a lot of people who are in the midst of their career. You're kind of in the, let's say, the nascent stages of your career. How do you use maybe what you learned at camp at school, especially knowing full well that there's probably a lot of people listening to this podcast who are in school and haven't yet started their career. So I'm interested in how you use the stuff that you took from RYLA in your academic life.
Oh, for sure. So a lot of this goes back to kind of our beginning of like quitting is okay. I initially went in with like doing a certificate in Japanese, and I tried to push through for like a year and a half doing the certificate, because I was like, I really enjoy it. I need some kind of certificate or minor. And it, to me at the time, was like, I'm not taking the easy way out by doing business Spanish. I'm doing something that is challenging for me. But what it was doing was it was taking away my time, my energy, and my focus from classes that were necessary for my major. And I remember having a chat with my professor, and she was like, you're either going to have to retake this class or because I was failing it at the time, and then she was like, you're either gonna have to retake this class or you're gonna have to like change your certificate. She's like, do you have to do this? And in that moment I had to kind of get over my initial notion and like my pride of I'm doing something challenging and be like, this isn't working for me. And I remember calling my dad and kind of breaking down and being like, but I put so much time and so much effort into it. And he was like, but is it what you want? Is it making you happy, or is it adding more stress? And it was in that moment I realized, like, I have to quit and I have to understand that there is nothing wrong in doing that. And that really goes back to like a lot of the concepts in RYLA of like, if something doesn't work for you, it's okay to let it go. And it's okay to change direction and move on. And that doesn't make you any less of a person. It doesn't make you any less strong or any less smart to change direction. If at all, it means that you understand yourself and are in tune enough with yourself to be like, it's okay to change.
Yeah, one of the things that I always, and I think we hear this a lot from campers, is like, failing doesn't make you a failure,
Yeah.
And that's, I think, just such, like, we joked at the beginning, like, quitting's underrated, but like in a lot of ways, like, it kind of is, because if something's making you miserable, and something's like, if you are if something's a net negative in your life, like, knowing yourself and having the kind of wherewithal to understand that it is a net negative in your life, that's challenging. But at the same time, it sounds like you made a decision based on knowing yourself that allowed you to pursue something that makes you, that's going to bring you more, that's going to make you happier, and also, down the road is eventually going to lead you to make a bigger impact on the world, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And it was the fact that as soon as I put in that to drop the class, and as soon as I put in to switch my certificate, the instant relief I felt, I was like, okay, I've made the right choice.
Okay, so that's fascinating, and I think that's going to resonate with a lot of our listeners who are maybe in college or heading off to college or things like that. Let's now get down to brass tacks and talk about the reason that you're here. And the reason that you're here is because you are almost single-handedly responsible for the podcast coming back.
Yes.
Because at camp, and Josey, back me up on this. Tell me, I want you to fact check me in real time.
Okay.
We were at camp and we were minding our own business. You and
Correct.
I remember us playing a riveting game of Jenga.
Yes.
And at which point, Krystal storms over to us and grabs us by the collar. Do I still have this right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. And she throws us. I don't know how much she's been lifting, but it is an impressive amount, because she throws us up against by our collar up against the wall, and says, I'm going to need that podcast back.
This is all very true.
And I mean, I don't know about you, Josey. I was super intimidated.
I was sweating, and it was, if you remember camp this year, it was a little cooler, so it was not because of the heat.
No.
But I was, everything checks out.
No. So Krystal, a couple of follow-ups to you straight up bullying us into restarting the RYLACast. That is, we have maybe embellished a couple of the details, but she did come up and basically say, "Where's my podcast?"
No, that's exactly what I said. I think, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw Greg under the bus here. Greg sheepishly turned to me and said, "Yeah, Josey, where is the podcast?"
This is what happened. Yeah.
That does sound like me. That is definitely something I would do. So my question to you, Krystal, is a two-parter. One, why was it so important to you that we restart this podcast? And two, are you happy now?
So it was really important for me for this podcast to restart, mostly because no other podcast do I enjoy as much as the RYLACast. And no, I'm not embellishing that. That is actually very true. Because they're short enough where I'm like, this is good, but they're also like informational and also kind of funny. But they also keep, again, like I said, keep that RYLA magic going throughout the year. And yes, I am now very happy. Thank you. May this not be the only episode you revive.
No, we've already like planned out at least 2 others, and we have like a whole plan to do the podcast. It's all your fault. Like Josey and I were, we were at a friend's house a couple weeks ago, and we just kind of looked at each other. We're like, guess we probably better schedule this thing, huh? or else Krystal's gonna be real mad.
Oh yeah, I was actually plotting to email you around the time that you emailed me. So just in time.
Well, thank you, Krystal. All joking aside, thank you for lighting a fire under us and getting this season kicked off.
Yay! I'm glad.
So now comes the time in our interview, if I can knock the rust off, where we ask our invited guest to plug something. So hopefully I'm not leaving you to scramble for a last minute thing. But this is your opportunity to plug whatever you want. Not this podcast. I'll make it challenging for you.
Yeah, don't plug this pod. They're already listening to this.
Yes, so I do have something I want to plug, and it is the glitter I used at camp. It is a brand called Designer Dust Co. I have now proven that it is sweat-proof and camp-proof, so it's actually pretty affordable too. But yeah.
Okay. Are you? And so I take it that glitter is a significant part of your whole scene.
It really is actually. Quick tangent story, but like when I was younger, there was a girl in elementary school who would bully me for using glitter in class. So now I've just turned it into my thing because, as the ever famous Scooter quote goes, the you that you are is better than the you anyone wants you to be. And so I took it upon myself as a challenge to unabashedly and unashamedly use glitter in my everyday life. And I wear it to work and I wear it to school. And I wanted to use it at camp.
Well, that rules.
Yeah.
Krystal Perez, you may have bullied us into doing this podcast again, but we are glad you did. And thank you for being a guest on the RYLACast.
Yes, thank you.
Of course.
And our thanks once again to Krystal Perez for not only bullying us into doing the podcast, but also walking the walk and being committed to it because she was our guest on the return episode. Good conversation with her. I had never met her in person. I think for a lot that was kind of an experience we all had at camp this past time because there was a lot of people who had never been, who maybe hadn't been, or campers who weren't able to be ACs. But she's a smart cookie, that Krystal Perez. I hope she's not listening to this because I don't want to hear her compliment. I don't want her to hear me complimenting her.
The good news is, maybe she'll just have to leave a review or something. You won't get her response in real time.
So we appreciate Krystal Perez hopping on with us. And now, rounding third and heading for home to close us out, I give you America's sweetheart, Andrew Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yes, so I've got the closing remarks for this. I can't think of a term that hasn't been used yet, but reinvigoration.
Ooh,
of the RYLACast.
That's a good one, Josey. I might use that in the description.
Oh, that's good. So, Greg, I have a question. Are you familiar with the CBS hit Big Brother?
I have no idea where this is going. I am vaguely aware of it. I can't say I've ever sat down and watched it, but correct me if I'm wrong, but the thrust of it is that strangers live in a home all together and they have cameras on them all the time, and then like they get voted out based on nonsense. Do I
correct? That's a very good grasp, and it's there's competitions on who's going to get voted out, who's not. So it's and I won't take too long, but it's Camp RYLA with adults with less leadership, but just
Wow, what a pull. Okay.
Let me go back. So it's the idea that you've got strangers thrust into uncomfortable situations, and then with the added bonus that there's a camera on them. And I don't know, behind the curtain how much is set up, but it's led to believe that this is all kind of ad-libbed.
All kind of organic.
Right. But this, I set that up to follow up with, my wife, Joni, and I watched the show. She got me into it a couple years ago, and I had we had one of those moments where a quote came from an incredibly unlikely source. and the quote, it was talking about, there was some tempers were flaring a couple weeks ago. And the quote was, "Just because you're strong doesn't mean we have to test how strong you are." And I heard that and thought, I didn't think I would get leadership lessons from a CBS hit reality show, but here we are.
Wow, that is good.
Yeah, I thought that's important from a couple different standpoints. We humans have a tendency to be really hard on ourselves, and I think that's an important point. We talk about, or Krystal talked about being intentional. We talk about being committed. I don't think we need to. Life can be very difficult, as we've seen over the last 16 months, 16 plus. Life can be hard enough, and we don't need to test our strength every day. And then the other aspect of that is obviously for other people. An important part of leadership is what are you doing with the community around you? And I think that idea of we're all strong. Some days are easier than others. Your cup probably isn't full every day, but just to give yourself and others that grace every day, when you encounter something from a minor inconvenience all the way up, just there's no need to, we all don't need to be on edge. We don't need to test how strong we are with our words or actions, just we're all doing the best we can. And I truly believe that. But I thought that was an incredibly unlikely source. I'm not going to turn this into a Big Brother podcast, but you never know where those leadership lessons will strike.
That's interesting. And I like that, we don't have to I think part of being a leader is trusting the people around you. And part of that is just trusting that, I don't have to, if you tell me that you're strong enough to do something and that you're good for the challenge, then I can just take you at your word and say, all right, yeah, you're on the team member and you're on the team. And hopefully we don't need to see where that strength comes from. But if we do, we know you'll be there. I like that a lot. Good job, Josey. And good job, CBS hit reality series Big Brother. That is definitely Greg. The first time we've had that.
100%, and maybe the last.
But this will not be the last episode of the RYLACast. No. We will have another episode of the RYLACast coming at you in 2 weeks. That is a promise.
He says hesitantly.
Well, I've already booked the guest, so we probably better,
Right, that's true.
So, all right. That's going to do it for us. Thanks for spending a little bit of your day with us and for being a consumer of the RYLACast. Thank you for bearing with us as we get our sea legs back under us here, back doing this podcast thing. But we do thank you for being a subscriber and for listening to the RYLACast. Of course, check out the website at
www.ryla5810.org.
Bang, mid-season form. He's back, folks. And so please go check that out and follow RYLA 5810 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And so finally, I'm all out of sorts here. I've got to get my fastball back. Here with an antiquated way of telling somebody about the RYLACast is Josey.
Oh man,
Remember
you want to
this?
talk about? Oh my gosh, this is out of left field. Okay, All right, an antiquated way with telling people about the RYLACast that is definitely not me stalling to come up with an antiquated way to tell people about the RYLACast. So
People
I
like this
think,
podcast because we're authentic.
right. I think you should go and grab 2 cans, preferably, you want to reuse the ones, maybe you had some Campbell's Chunky Soup or something, and grab 2 cans, tie a string together, make sure the string is, I don't know, a couple 100 feet long, and just leave 1 can maybe by, like if you have a collection of mailboxes in your neighborhood or maybe an apartment, if you just lower that down to another floor and just say, listen to the RYLACast, listen to the RYLACast, or even play a recording of just you saying those words to the other end.
Do what Josey said. We'll talk to you next time on the RYLACast.